So in our last video, we ended up with anticipation. We ended up with putting this A flat 7 chord on the downbeat of the measure to foreshadow what the melody is going to do next. All right. So what we're going to do now is substitute out the chord that is on the third and fourth beat of that measure, which is still the A flat 7 that we had at the beginning of the measure. We're going to substitute it out. Let me just put it there just for instructional purposes. We're going to substitute that out for something else. So with the anticipation that we set up earlier, we already kind of went into the minor mode. So remember, when you're in minor, you can't borrow or substitute from major. You can borrow from minor if you're in major, but you can't borrow from major if you're in minor. So our substitution options are limited to only stuff that's inside the circle. All right, the minor chords are what are inside our circle of fifths. So if I want to put something else here on the third and fourth beat of this measure, it has to be S7 or A diminished, or this little slash chord over here, B over D sharp. What we're going to do is use this A7, A diminished 7, excuse me. What we're going to do is use this A diminished 7, which is a cool little boom, like chromatic stepwise movement up to the downbeat of the next measure, right? Which is really cool because now we get that in our bass, which we've talked about several times is one of our goals when we're talking about the bass line, or when we're thinking about the bass line when harmonizing something. Stepwise movement or fifths and fourths, all right? And that's exactly what we achieve by substituting A flat 7 out for A diminished 7, all right? So now that we have that, let's take it one step further. So there's a little subtlety here that you probably want to consider, and it's these little details that you should always keep in mind when you're reharmonizing something or just playing music in general, because in music, I think the devil is in the details. Like how you voice a chord is just as important as the chord you're using. How you say something is just as important as what you're saying. So with that in mind, we're going to change the A diminished 7 into an inversion. We're going to make it a second inversion chord, making E flat the bass note. Now, I'll tell you why in a second. So let's do this. Let's highlight the inversion, the pentagon, making the fifth, the five-sided symbol indicating the fifth is going to be our bass note. We have our pentagon highlighted. I'll re-add the chord. So now the bass has gone from here to, and I'm going to make it go to D on this chord by making that an inversion also. So if we want it to be D, that's first inversion. D is the third of B flat. So for the third, I want the triangle, the three-sided shape, and then I have that highlighted. All right, so now our bass is going B, da, da, which isn't stepwise movement. The reason we don't want it so definitive or conclusive is because it's right in the middle of our section. Yeah, it's the beginning of like technically a new subphrase, but it's not the beginning of, in a larger scheme of things, like a brand new section or a brand new paragraph, if you will, right? So like this kind of like half-step movement that we originally had when we didn't have the slash chords there is a bit too, like I said, conclusive for something that's in the middle of our idea, the middle of our little musical thought. So by changing it over to this, by using the slash chords, it's a bit more ambiguous and less this is the end or this is the beginning sort of idea that you would normally have with this like chromatic movement. It's these little subtleties that you want to kind of consider when you're reharmonizing something, because like I said, it's these little details that set something apart from another. And sometimes you can't quite put your finger on it, or you can't quite put your ear on it, but you know something's really cool and you don't know why. And this is an example of why this would be cool versus, all right, so let me show you what I'm talking about. This is what it's going to sound like with the slash chords now. If you guys have any comments or questions or suggestions, just post them down below and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Thanks for watching.